We are back with another episode of Second Opinion. Today, we're going to do a rapid run through of a pitch deck submitted to our team from a gaming company called Play Sesh. We're going to rip through these slides super fast and give you a taste of what an investor is thinking as they are going through an early stage pitch deck. Let's dive in. All right, so we have Play Sesh, drag, drop, and play test, build games together in your browser. Okay, the Figma for game design and play testing. Cool. Play Sesh is where you drag, drop, and play test, build games together in your browser. So I'm immediately thinking this is like Roblox, but maybe better. And I guess there's a concept called play testing, which as a generalist investor, I'm not super familiar with. So right off the bat, I'm a little bit confused, but hopefully they clear things up soon in the deck. A once-in-a-year team, exits, expertise, and game-changing execution. The team looks like they bring a lot of good logos. I'm a little bit kind of taken aback by this once-in-a-year term. I'm not sure exactly what that means. It just kind of jars you, and it's a little confusing, and so that kind of sets me off on a weird note, but the team looks really good. They have 4 exits as early employees, deep technical and product expertise, looking good so far. I like that they led with the team. I know that there's some smart people behind this concept. Game developers lose months to years before knowing what works. Is my game actually fun? So this slide kind of makes it seem, okay, well, I was thinking this was more like Roblox and letting people kind of like build games and play test them, but this looks like it's maybe a solution more geared towards like real game developers. But I'm feeling like there's like a little bit of credibility lost in this kind of like cheesy, pixelated kind of graphic that doesn't actually tell me much. It's just one sentence on the slide. It's likely not necessary, but I guess it just kind of helps me understand that this is for game developers and they lose months to years before knowing what works. Fragmented tools equal lost context, wasted time, and a $1,300 workflow. Again, I'm not learning much about the problem. It looks like, I guess game development is very, manual. There's all of these tools. I'm not sure what these tools really are. I can look at them. Some of them look familiar. Some of them look unfamiliar. But if I'm an investor that's not familiar with the space, I think these 2 slides likely, should be used in helping very quickly educate me on the space and what I actually need to know about the space. The only things I know is that it takes time to know it works and that there's a $1,300 workflow, which, if I'm looking for companies that are going to create this multi-billion-dollar opportunity or this billion-dollar-plus opportunity, that $1,300 workflow isn't really that exciting for you to disrupt. It's just not that much money for you to create the type of ROI needed to create these large companies. It can work in some cases if there's a huge TAM. Game developers, I'm not sure is a huge TAM. Maybe I'll learn that it is a huge TAM. If that $1,300 workflow is like per month and scaled across like hundreds of employees at hundreds of different companies, it's a different story. But again, I think I'm like, not kind of fully grasping the huge business opportunity here just based on this kind of problem setup. So they're unlocking a $500 billion market for the next generation of game creators. I guess game creation, hopefully, is this $300 billion market, and that's growing really fast to be a $500 billion market in 2030. Again, if we're providing kind of this like operating system for game developers, is it really truly a $300 billion market, or is the broader gaming landscape a $300 billion market and the actual kind of like tools for game development is less? That's what I'm thinking, just given the size here. So I think like now I'm starting to kind of like feel like this deck is like almost too dumbed down, that it's not really like hitting on this, kind of like rational or logical side of my brain and making me feel like they're not taking it as serious as it probably should be with this first few slides. Something like this should help me better understand the actual market for the product that I'm looking to solve for. Of course, it's a big number, and if it really is all of the tools in game development equates to this $300 billion market opportunity, make that clear, because I'm currently kind of writing this off as you're trying to capitalize on a large TAM of just gaming, and telling me that that you could capture some portion of that market without kind of giving me like a little bit more rationale. So I'm starting to lose a little bit of my my credibility here, but let's see where we go with it. Early alpha platform, they're proving the concept out. These are screenshots of our user interface. There's a visual canvas, AI assisted design, and analytics. This looks really good. I love the visual canvas concept. I think that worked for Figma. If that isn't a part of game development, maybe that's where we actually talk about the problem. We're saying like there's all these like non-visual tools, and it kind of hurts the ability for game developers to like collaborate, or for new people to enter the game development space. It requires a really niche expertise, and by building this visual canvas, we can like get people that are familiar with Figma to be game developers. Maybe that creates a much larger TAM. That might be a better point to make, but this looks pretty good from like a solution perspective. Why now? The perfect storm for game innovation. There's 7.6 billion in game development tools. Okay, that's the real market size here, and that's finally was delivered upon. 73% of studios are using AI. 48% of revenue is captured by independent creators. Okay, so now I'm actually understanding the market, and if there's this growing market of independent creators, and we can create tools that live in the $7.6 billion ecosystem to make more of those independent creators and kind of like change the fabric of game development with kind of AI and visual canvas and Figma inspired workflows. That's a story that is worth kind of telling, but I feel like I could be delivered that on a silver platter because most people aren't going to spend as much time as they've already spent on the deck. They've got rapid validation and development cycle. Okay, I'm going to gloss through this. I'm just going to kind of assume this is an early stage company, which is fine. They've done a few things that kind of prove things out. But it doesn't look like they have much revenue yet. That's what I'm getting from this slide. Their platform is better than a fragmented ecosystem of Figma, Unity, Roblox, and Playtest Cloud. So I'm obviously familiar with a few of these. I'm not familiar with Playtest Cloud. I'm honestly not even that familiar with Roblox. And I'm bringing my own bias into this, but every investor likely will. So I'm thinking like I'm still, this is helpful for me to understand that we're trying to compete against these guys. I can read through the fine print and just better understand the distinction. But I think like I probably would need to just kind of at a higher level understand like, hey, we're bringing Figma to Unity, and like trying to kind of like not compete with these on features, but like combining the best to solve for a specific value prop, which again, I don't think was really communicated that effectively. When we talked about the solution, we're literally just showing product shots, but we're not really showing how we solve for, the problems of game development taking a long time and or, costing people some money. So I think that there's a little bit more that could be done here. I don't hate this slide. I actually think it's a good slide for an appendix, but perhaps it's like too in the weeds and doesn't really actually tell me what I want to know, which is, really how is this going to be like really disruptive? I think even, you said it in the fine print on the first slide, the Figma for game design. I like that. I think that sounds really cool. Now you got to just show me that game design is going to be this big market in the today and in the future, and we could win that market by bringing kind of like what we know works, which is Figma's kind of visual canvas and collaboration tools to that market. So I think it's a good concept. I just think we're failing to communicate it as optimally as I would want. All right, we have freemium, scalable subscriptions, and usage-based pricing. I've said this in a million videos. I do think it's probably a little too early to talk about pricing. I think it's probably going to change, your pre-revenue. I think what I'm more intrigued to know is like the actual who are customers, who is the pro and indie tier, who are the small teams, like how many people are out there that could fulfill these types of contracts, and then how does it scale? Like how are we gonna get into the pro and indie community and have them like promote us more? How are we gonna like wedge our way into big teams or small teams and have this like per seat really scale across those teams, and how many teams are like that are there? That's the kind of stuff I'm caring more about than like the pricing today, which I think is likely subject to change. Grassroots growth, meeting creators where they are, LinkedIn, Reddit, Discord, and game jams and events. Okay, cool. That's the go-to-market strategy. This is fine, but again, I think there's maybe like a higher order thing to communicate here. A little bit more rigor than just kind of slapping a few things and just showing this like funnel to go to market. I think, why is maybe it's more like we're really going to start with Reddit, Discord, and game jams and events to build this grassroots movement. and then scale it through LinkedIn, scale it through ads. Like, something a little bit more substance could feel a little bit more rational than I think what feels kind of like, three categories that, kind of make sense. LinkedIn kind of like is a question mark for me, just because I don't think of it as like the game developers, like where they hang out. But if you prove to me that that was the case, maybe I would learn a little bit more. So I think there's a little bit more here. I'm thinking this is a little too JV. Month roadmap, raising 900K on a safe. They've got a financial breakdown. All right, this is cool. I think 900K is kind of a weird number, but if you could justify that number, I mean, it just seems like it's close to a million, but it's not a million. So I think, like, just to give my candid reactions, I'm thinking like that's just a little bit strange of an ask, but it's not that crazy. I mean, people ask for all sorts of different numbers, but I think like a million kind of feels like more of a true kind of. And then shape the future of game development with PlaySesh. Let's talk. There's a QR code. I like this. This is a really nice closing slide. There's an appendix with another competitor set. I think obviously this should be updated in a real future version you're going to send to investors, because we're now, I guess, showing different types of competitors. And I think that's it. So, this $20 a month replacing that 1100 workflow, that's a 57x cost savings. Those are numbers that are in the fine print on an appendix slide. I don't think they're here. I guess they are here, but it's still a fine print on a competition slide. That kind of stuff could be really summarized in a solution slide as like the, value prop of, what we can do if we consolidate this whole thing. And then I just need to better understand like the actual market, like how many people are spending this $1,300 a month, and how does creating a product that saves them so much money and so much time and does a lot more than just those two things, and creates this large market of potential game developers, and grows this 48% of revenue captured by independent creators to like 75%. This is the future of gaming. And there's going to be, thousands and millions of people like that can be game developers now and paying the $20 a month. That's when I start getting excited about this type of concept. So I think the concept's great. I just think there's a lot of opportunities for this deck to instill more credibility in the problem, teach me what I need to know so that I can really capture the problem. Don't hurt your credibility with market sizes that feel, kind of cherry picked to be large and don't actually really make sense, and deliver on the value prop, and then maybe kind of streamline, your thinking as you talk about go-to-market, competition, etc. So good start. This looks good, but I think it leaves some room for improvement. And that'll do it for the quick run through. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of Second Opinion. Until then, peace.